Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is Lee Jensen, winner of the 2016 Blackjack Ball Grosjean Cup, and the founder of a new blog called AP Street. Lee Jensen, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me.
We received an email addressed to gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com that said, I just purchased the LVA membership that comes with a coupon book. And in the coupon book, there's two different promotions where one can play blackjack and upon getting a total of 22, can use the coupon to push the hand in question. As I couldn't find anything on using this kind of coupon from the internet, I've tried to think about how to optimally use this coupon, and thus far I've deduced that the player should probably treat 12 on the first two cards as they would 11, doubling against 2 to 10, and maybe hitting against 2 to 6 with 3 or more cards. Am I way off here? And what other changes to basic strategy would this coupon entail? And also, am I correct in thinking that as long as the player holds this coupon until he uses it for the first time, the game is plus EV, assuming otherwise decent rules? Now, this is beyond my expertise. So, Richard?
Yeah, so back in about 1980, the Hooters casino was called the Treasury, and they came up with this idea, and it was called Catch 22. And it was the same thing. They would give you a coupon every day, although I think their coupons, the LVA coupon has a maximum bet of $25. The Treasury coupons, I think, had a maximum bet of $500. And according to Wong, in his book Blackjack Secrets, he said the coupon is worth 100% of a bet. And slightly more than that if you always, or if you double down on 12 versus 2 through 6, if they push both bets on the double down, which at the Treasury they did. So now with the LVA, I talked to Anthony Curtis, and they analyzed it, and they thought that $25 maximum bet, the coupon was worth about $23. One of the differences may be that the Treasury was stand soft 17 and the D where the coupon is hit 17. That may account for it. Wong may have been off slightly, I don't know. But the LVA coupon, you are not allowed to double down. Yeah, I mean, you do not push both bets if you double down on 12 and catch 22. So
wait. There's only one bet.
What do you mean there's only one bet?
You're starting betting $25, and you put out another 25. So now you have one bet of 50 that usually is treated whatsoever.
So at the Treasury that was allowed, and so you could bet $250 and then double down and for a maximum of $500. Anyway, at the D you're not allowed to double down or split pairs and use the coupon. So LVA, Anthony Curtis thinks the coupon is worth $23. As to changes in basic strategy, you shouldn't be doubling on 12 because they're not going to push both bets. But yes, you should be always hitting 12, even against small cards. So there you go.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Lee?
Sounds right to me. That's
good.
A very detailed answer.
For a once-a-year bet of $25, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time studying it.
Yeah, if there were a whole bunch of complicated 3-card combinations or something, yeah, you're right. Once a year for $25, although I do know some people get more than one LVA coupon book.
Shocking. We have another blackjack question sent in to us at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Seems this guy is willing to spend the time to learn basic strategy, but he doesn't want to waste time learning the wrong basic strategy. He wants to know which basic strategy he should learn to play in Las Vegas. Richard?
Well, I would say the most important thing is that whichever one you learn it backwards and forwards and in your sleep so that if I woke you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, when do you split nines, you would know without having to think about it. But for Las Vegas, I would choose 6 deck, hit 17, double after splits, and learn the few extra surrenders, because depending on where you're going to play in Las Vegas, it's only a couple of extra things to learn when to surrender. So the most important thing is that you learn, whichever one you learn, you have it absolutely correct.
So I don't know if this guy's comp hustling or what, but basic strategy is a losing game without the comp hustling. And trying to figure out the least you can get away with is not the mindset for people trying to win at gambling.
Right, but if you're a recreational player, then absolutely learn basic strategy and lose less, and drink more.
Uh-huh.
You can make up for that 0.5%, in alcohol.
Okay, Lee Jensen, last time you were on this show, we were celebrating your victory at the Blackjack Ball. You were a complete unknown to much of the blackjack community up until that time. Did that victory change your life in any meaningful respect?
Yeah, for me, the biggest change is that I get to go to the Blackjack Ball every year, which is pretty cool. Other than that, I would say no, really, because I still work with all the same people. It was really nice to meet all the people that I've learned from and read their books. But really, for my professional playing career, it's pretty much been the same.
It hasn't expanded your network?
Not too much, really. I mean, I knew a lot of the people at the ball anyway, because I worked with them. So the main people I met were like Grosjean and Ed Thorpe last year, and like people like that I don't really work with, but
minor folks like that.
But it's great to meet them anyway and learn from them. So
now you were awarded a huge bottle of champagne for that victory, thanks to Don Johnson, who I think was lobbying for himself to be selected. Didn't work that year, but a year later he was inducted into the Blackjack Hall of Fame. Was getting it home a problem?
Yeah, it was a pretty big problem because of the weight of the case and the bottle. It weighed, I think it was 92 or 95 pounds when I finally got it to the airport. And I was traveling by myself, so
It's more than 3 ounces of liquid.
So, yeah, obviously I had to check it, and I'm lucky I didn't
surcharge.
Yeah, it cost me quite a bit. I don't remember exactly how much, but I was really happy I didn't injure myself trying to drag it into the rental car and into the airport. And it survived the flight, so kudos to the airline for not breaking it. But it is home now, and it's been actually in storage in my cellar. I'm still waiting for the right time to pop it. So eventually that's going to get done, by me and some teammates probably.
Yeah, would you pretty much with champagne have to empty it the same night you open it? So, good. Hope that's a hell of a party.
Better be a big party. It was an awfully big bottle.
Was it what, 15 liters? What was it?
I believe it was 15 liters, yes.
It's bigger than a bread box. Okay. Let's talk about the main reason you're here today. You have a new blog called AP Street, addressed to Advantage players. Why did you decide we needed a new blog for Advantage players?
Well, my main reason was, me and some of the people I work with, when we first started out, we really learned from the internet, going on the old Ken Smith site and, Blackjack 21 back in the day. And it seems like now the free sites for gamblers, a lot of them are just kind of full of misinformation and full of people trying to sell stuff even. So I just kind of thought it would be nice for people looking to get into gambling to have something to go to that actually gives accurate information and is helpful to them, and free. So, and not trying to sell anything,
The, in my opinion, the best current AP blog, irregular though it is Beyond Numbers by James Grosjean. How do you envision your blog being similar to the one by James, And how do you think it's different?
Well, they're both blogs by professional gamblers. James' blog, I think, is great also. I really enjoy it. But I think it focuses on more of the finer points and things that would benefit the more experienced gambler. My blog is really simple stuff. It even talks about how to get a cheap rental car or get a cheap hotel room. And I think beginners would benefit from my blog. But also there's some stuff geared towards the more advanced players as well.
Now, I've read your blogs, and it seems like what you're saying is pretty similar to what Richard Munchkin has been saying on the air, although with your own twist. Do you consider Richard one of your mentors?
Yeah, definitely. I think Richard has really helped a lot of people in the community over the years. He was always active online and, really quick to respond to emails, it seems, from anyone or messages. And, I'm sure I communicated with him even before I ever actually met him, which was a couple of years ago. And yeah, it's kind of like on my blog, I hope to kind of give back to the people trying to get in it the same way that Richard did to me and so many others.
I haven't really written anything in quite a while. And I was quite impressed here at the beginning. You had a lot of posts in a pretty short time, and it's really difficult to keep up that pace. And I'm wondering if you're already experiencing some of that, running out of things to talk about.
Yeah, definitely I am. But me and Blake, the editor and contributor to the blog, did write a lot of the articles before we even launched because we thought that we would like to have fresh content for people to read just so it doesn't kind of go stale and people don't lose interest when there's nothing new on there. But it's getting to the point now where we have to kind of crank out some more articles. So
I would put them a little less frequently. I like reading them. It gives me ideas, things to talk about on the show or whatever. But if you're trying to put 2 or 3 a week, that's tough to go at that pace. I'm astounded at you, Bob, actually, that you've been cranking out a weekly article and you don't miss for
20 years.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of articles.
Yeah, well, thank you. I do recycle some, but not a high percentage of them, and then they expand as you go along, because now I'll get into relationship situations between me and Bonnie or something. Or
those are the ones I think people know a lot more about your wife and your ex-wife than they may want to. But for example, I don't think this. Well, maybe this one is coming out.
Are you referring to the one about going for a 4-card flush instead of a 3-card royal?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I read that today.
Was out, earlier this week.
Yeah, it was out earlier this week, and I was reading that, and I was thinking, wow, this is exactly kind of a question I had, because sometimes, so the article is about if you have a 4-card flush or a 3-card royal, when do you, not what's the best EV play, but sometimes you don't want to hit the royal. In my own case, if I go to pick up my wife's free play, the last thing I want to happen is to hit a royal and she's not there. And so you talk about what does it cost to avoid hitting the royal. So anyway, yeah, that particular article happened to be very relevant to me. I'm sure many of our listeners have wondered about that kind of situation as well. And actually, it'd be interesting, you didn't address this, but if you didn't go for the royal at all, for example, if you only played 4 coins at a time instead of 5, so that you couldn't hit the royal, how much would that cost you overall?
Well, that part is easy to figure out. On any video poker software, you can put in 1 coin and hit the analyze game, and it'll give you a percentage. In general, it's 1.8% or so off of the
total.
And the The only reason, it's always going to be a negative game. The only reason you would want to play 4 coins instead of 1 is because you're trying to get this free play over with.
Yeah, 4 times faster. Yeah.
But if you can't afford to play 5, which is the reason a lot of people do it, then since the second, third, and fourth coin are all big losers, then you should only be playing 1. But in your case, Richard, if you're trying to pick up Nelly's free play, that might be a good reason to play 4. Good. All right. You mentioned, Richard, Ken Smith and James Grosjean. Are there any other mentors you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, one person I met when I first was kind of playing out in Vegas was a guy who goes by, I believe he goes by RC on the air. He was like, or online he goes by RC. I only know him by his real name, but he was someone who I learned a lot from. He's a longtime Vegas resident and professional gambler.
Actually, if listeners go to gamblingwithanedge.com, I have an interview with RC from back quite a number of years ago. I was originally going to do a second book called Blackjack Wizards. And once I found out that you make absolutely no money from books, I said I will just give this away for free since it pays the same as if I put it in a book. So those interviews are on Gambling with an Edge at gamblingwithanedge.com, and I have an interview with RC in there.
Yeah, and of course everyone else, at the ball, like the legends that kind of made card counting and gambling possible for me. I really look up to all those guys. It's just that I've never really worked with them, or I don't know them on a personal level, but it's really great to put a face to a lot of the names.
All right. Now, Blake Phillips is your co-author on this site. Without revealing anything that would require Blake to kill you, tell us, what is Blake Phillips really like?
Yeah, Blake is a friend and a playing partner of mine for 2 or 3 years now, and he's been a professional gambler for about 5. He also is a writer, so he helps me with the editing of the site. And yeah, he's going to be probably contributing about as many articles as I will over the coming months. When we run out of stuff, he's got a lot of good ideas.
Your first article was entitled, "What is Advantage Play?" And you came up with a different answer than what I normally think about when I think of what is advantage play. So what was that about?
Yeah, mainly I wanted to give an example that someone who doesn't gamble could understand. That's why I use the free drink example, like playing a Game King blackjack machine, which a lot of people walking through Vegas probably have done. As an advantage player, if you tell a random person what you do for a living and you say, I'm an advantage gambler or advantage player, they probably wouldn't know what you're talking about. So I kind of tried to lay that out for someone who has no experience.
There's a movie with Adam Sandler. I think it's called Punch Drunk Love. I hope I'm not confusing it with a different movie.
Well, there are 87 Adam Sandler movies out there.
Well, this one
in the last 2 years,
kind of based on a real guy who would buy pudding, and the airlines were having this promotion where you got airline miles for buying craft products, and this guy found that the pudding came in like 6-packs, and they were giving you 6 times the miles that they were supposed to. And this guy's in Wikipedia. You can look it up. But they made a movie about. The movie took that idea, and because what the guy in real life did was he just bought like
cases and cases.
Yes, and he would donate the pudding to the homeless shelters and stuff, but used the miles. He accumulated just an enormous amount of miles. So my son saw that movie, and my son has started gambling. And when people would ask him, "What are you doing?" his answer is, "I buy pudding." That's what an advantage player is to him. But really, it's the same idea. Advantage play isn't just in a casino. It's seeing an advantage and taking advantage of it.
Correct.
Now, I'm not a table game player and was not aware of the distinction you made in a blog article called "Is it Heat or Is it Sweat?" Tell me about that.
Well, first, I was curious as to Munchkin's take on that article, because I know you played a lot of tables and probably in Vegas as well. And Vegas seems to be the place, one of the main places where you get that kind of sweat. I notice you don't really get that outside of Vegas as much.
I think that's a leftover from the old days, because in the old days, they sweat the money. They just hated to lose, and they would sweat like crazy over the money. And I always felt, there's a big distinction, right? Heat is when they're suspicious of you and they think you're up to something. Sweat is when you're winning and they hate it and they wish you would just go away, right? Because no boss is ever going to get fired because the gambler left. But they could get fired if you win too much money, or the boss could come make their life miserable, which I know is ridiculous, but that still happens a lot here in Vegas. And I think one of the advantages I had as a player was that I had been a dealer and a boss, and I was able to recognize when it was actually heat and be gone, and when it was just the guy sweating. Or the other thing that happens is you see a guy come into the pit, and the pit boss starts talking to him, and they're both looking over at you, and now you're like, is it heat? And then the guy approaches you and says, "Hi, I'm a host here." There are a lot of players who might be out the door before the host ever came up and introduced himself. Yep. So it's something that, all you can do is use your best judgment, but you have to be aware that, that it may not be heat.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. And the idea came for this article when I was actually playing downtown with a few friends who were not really familiar with playing in Vegas. And we had only been playing about 20 minutes, and it was definitely something the casino wasn't going to pick off. But they were freaking out because of the amount of money that we were betting. And, the other players were going, "Should we leave? What's going on? Are we about to get kicked out?" And I had to explain kind of, this is Vegas, especially downtown Vegas. You could send your grandma in here to play $300 a hand, and if she starts winning, this may actually happen to her as well. So I think we need to play through this.
Another one that used to just make me laugh, especially when you were doing something that did not involve counting cards. The boss would come up, glare at you, grab the cards out of the discard rack, and start thumbing through them face up as if they're counting them.
Yes.
And then look at you and put them back. And we always knew, we're in great shape, right? If they think that this has anything to do with card counting, then we knew we were okay.
Yeah, they still do that.
Yeah, and they just want you to leave. Really, that is it. They just want you to leave.
Yeah. And how many of those? You assume 0% of those pit bosses can actually count by looking at the cards. Actually,
you can tell by the way they go through them. Yeah. They go through them in clumps where they're not even seeing all the cards. They just want you to know that they're looking at the faces of the cards, because many people who are card counters would get up and leave at that point.
I've actually seen them do that on a shoe game and then say something like, "All right, 7 aces," and then walk away, which is just ridiculous.
The other thing that has happened, I've been on a table and, a boss will be looking at the table, and then another boss will come in, and they'll start talking, and they keep looking over at us, and the talking gets a little more animated, and we're scratching our heads, going, "Should we leave? What's going on? Why are we getting all this attention?" And we decide to play through it, and eventually the boss comes over and says to the dealer, "Look, you can't get those days off." You know what I mean? So it had absolutely nothing to do with us at all. It was all about the dealer wanting certain days off. So,
all right, let's look at a different blog. To cash or not to cash? Now, we've spoken about this several times on the show. What is your take on it?
Well, I imagine my take is similar to Richard's take on it. And, I think in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to hold on to chips. You wouldn't have to worry about giving your name up at the cage, and you could just buy in for whatever you want, play however you want, go cash out and walk out the door. But unfortunately, as professional gamblers, we can't do that. So in the article, I just talk about times when you should cash out all your chips and times when you shouldn't. And, kind of if you do decide to keep them, how to go about getting rid of them and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more
Paranoid?
More paranoid than you are. I mean, my attitude is basically if you play, you don't cash at all. Even if it looked like everything went smoothly, you just don't cash when you play. And it's bad things happen at the cage.
Correct.
If you're going to get barred, that's often the place where you're going to get barred. They get better photographs of you from that angle at the cashier's cage. And I don't mind hanging on to the chips.
But eventually you have to get rid of them.
Eventually, but you would be amazed at how many you can get rid of slowly over time.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Richard, mostly. In certain circumstances, though, like say if you're in the middle of nowhere playing a carnival game, and this has actually happened to me where I've won mid 5 figures and they have to bring special chips for me, and they give me the only purple they've ever had in that casino. In that instance, I don't think I could have left with them. I was forced to just say, well,
you're right.
This has got to happen.
There are exceptions, of course, to every rule.
Yeah.
I was on a play one time where, we won low 6 figures. It was not in Vegas. You could walk with that easily and cash it easily over time. But this was in kind of an out of the way place, and we just thought it would look too weird for the BP to just walk with all those chips. And we actually thought we could probably cash them over time, but the casino would realize that suddenly their inventory of $1,000 chips was slowly growing. And we just thought it's going to look too odd. But on the other hand, we knew that if he did cash, he was going to have to obviously give ID and have a CTR. But if they ever decided to look up his name, there was just no way we were ever going to be able to come back. And so, but in that instance, we decided he needs to cash, and, sure enough, they did look him up, and we did get to go back, but after about 30 minutes of the next play, 6 months later, they just said, no more. But
well, you could go back with a different VP.
That's true, but this was a really unusual game and a very unusual playing style, and it would look weird for another guy to come
firing away,
play that way,
Okay, good, and I suspect that's all we're going to hear about that.
Yeah.
I think I heard that story in person between you and a couple people. It was great.
That may be, yeah.
All right. Your article on when to show ID is specifically addressed to youngish players. Lee, you look, I don't know, mid-30s maybe. I suspect you could get ID at some places. What is that article all about?
Yeah, the main point of that article is, like you said, for younger people, because, in general, when you get to be a certain age, I think if you're getting ID'd in a casino, it's obviously bad unless you're cashing out or something like that. But when you're a younger player, a lot of times it can just be procedure. It can even be a rogue employee who just got out of an ID meeting or something and, wants to take charge and check ID of people. So sometimes it's not time to leave just because you get ID'd. And I've been playing for a long time. When I was younger, I would get carded all the time. And if I left the casino every time I got ID'd, I would have probably never played. But sometimes casinos actually use your young look as an excuse to get your ID for a reason you don't want them to get your ID. So I just kind of wrote about the differences there and how to recognize that and read the situation when that happens. One of the big things for me is if you've been playing for a while already and then suddenly, oh, you look like you may be under 21. Can I check your ID? A lot of times that could be just a reason to get your ID because they're about to kick you out.
Yeah, it's a really tough call. It's just a really tough call. All you can do is use your best judgment. But, at the cage, if they're asking for your ID, it means you're cashing out too much money.
Yeah.
You don't cash out that much. You want to cash out amounts that are small enough that nobody's going to ask for an ID.
Yeah.
Unless you're at a coast property where, one $500 chip, they're going to call the pit. They'll call the pit, but they don't necessarily ask for an ID. So,
yep.
I actually get asked for ID. I'm 70 years old, although I keep myself in really good shape, so I can pass for 68. I play at a local casino named Dottie's, which has probably 50 to 100 different outlets in greater Las Vegas. And I play at a number of them. Within my home, from my home, there's probably 10 or 15 of them within 10 miles. And I'll play at all of them simply because I play for higher stakes than most players do. And I do not want to be in a situation where, oh yeah, this guy always comes in on Tuesdays and he's playing for big money and he looks like he's 68 years old. And so anyway, I play at all of them so I don't get into a pattern they can recognize. But when I go into a place, it is regular Dottie's policy to ask for ID right away. And now I'm a video poker player and I'm playing to get W2Gs. And so showing ID is something that is going to be a four of a kind away. So it is not a huge deal at all to a video poker player as it is a blackjack player. I bitten the bullet a long time ago about my ID, but I still get ID'd I have not been ID'd for 40 some years, but now I'm getting ID'd regularly. It's kind of strange.
Yeah. One of the things that young people should be aware of, though, is if you show your ID at the beginning when you come in the newer places, they can go back and find that and zoom in and get your information off that ID. So there's always that danger. On boats, particularly, there's some boats in the Midwest that you have to show ID to enter the boat. Mm-hmm. And one suggestion that has been made is that you show your ID, enter the boat, and then leave the boat and tell the security guard, I'll be right back. Now you go outside, you put your ID outside, and you come back in, and now if they wind the tape back, all they see is that you came in without showing ID. They don't think to go back further and see that you had come in before and gone back out.
Yes, and I think I do mention that in the article as a way to hopefully trick them if they try to rewind the tape. One other thing I'd like to mention too, some of the boats in the Midwest now, it's kind of a disturbing trend, are linking that ID check to database searches. So you can automatically. So there's a couple places, I'm not going to name them, but where if you're in whatever, that casino's database or a national database is subscribed to, you may walk in and get walked right out before you even get to
Just
play.
Out of curiosity, why do you not want to name it?
I guess I could name it if you'd.
Yeah, I think people should know about it.
Well, the main one that I'm positive does that is the Horseshoe in southern Indiana. So, and I believe...
But not the one in northern Indiana. Not the one in Hammond. Interesting.
No. So, and also there are a couple casinos in Tunica, I believe, that follow a similar
I know
practice.
there's some casinos like the Wynn that if you apply for a player's card, it automatically gets run against a database.
Yeah.
But they don't automatically kick you out. Like I had a friend who got a player's card there, went and played some craps, was there for quite a while, played some craps, and then wandered over to a blackjack table. And as soon as he walked up to the blackjack table, they were like, excuse me, sir. You can play craps, but no blackjack.
Yeah, I think in those instances, a lot of times they note your card is what happens, because I've had that happen to me when I've got a player's card. I've never used it on the table, and I've hit, like a W2G playing video poker, and for some reason they pulled up the notes on my card and it said, do a skills check, no blackjack, or something like that. And I'd absolutely never used the card on the table. So I believe that was probably database.
How did you mean somebody there told you that?
I saw it. They accidentally pulled it up when they were checking something on my card. And they tried to block it out on the computer screen, but I was able to read it.
And Richard, you've mentioned a number of times, don't play video poker at the same place as you're playing blackjack. If you're trying to be uncarded,
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Although one of your new articles is kind of the opposite of that. One of your new articles is how to get low-cost rooms in Vegas. And so you can get low-cost rooms more easily if you're a video poker player than if you're a blackjack player. So if you're using your video poker to get rooms and then you want to play blackjack there, you kind of have to do both.
Well, no, I mean, I think you said in the article, actually I think it was Blake's article, but I believe he said, like, don't play table games at the place where you're going to get a room. Like, there are a lot of places that, like, if I were coming to Vegas, I would go play video poker at, like, a station property and get a room at Red Rock or Green Valley Ranch, but not play any table games at those places.
Yeah, I think the way I explained it in the article was, if you're planning on earning any serious EV at a place, I wouldn't plan on staying there anyway, just because getting kicked out when you're staying in the room or, have your stuff in the room or money in the room or whatever is not fun ever. But you can maybe earn slight EV from the video poker in the way of, buffets or free play for a return trip. But yeah, if you're planning on playing tables to make your money for the trip at the place, I wouldn't recommend staying there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And if I travel to other cities, I'll just pay for a room and not stay at the casino at all.
Yeah, it's a small price to pay for your peace of mind and security, in my opinion.
Well, plus, I don't know how much it goes on today. In the old days, while you were out, they would search your room, they would go through your stuff, They would even go into your safe deposit box and go through what was in your safe deposit box.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, you just don't want to. I mean, it's funny because Tommy used to tell stories about
Tommy
Highland that, our goal for the year is that we're going to go the whole year without security getting the team manual because someone forgot it in the hotel room. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's clearly too high of a goal, though.
Yeah. Well.
All right. We're talking to Lee Jensen on his new blog, AP Street. We're going to take a brief break for commercials. We'll be back with Lee and a few other questions shortly.
The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. From May 1st to 25th, Monday through Thursday, you may play the $500,000 Swipe, Spin, and Win game. Play 300 points between 3 a.m. and 11 p.m. and spin the wheel at the kiosk to get your prize. Prizes include free play, cash, resort gift card, and food coupons. On Memorial Day, Monday, May 29th, there will be 2 times points for video poker and 15 times points for penny slots. Midnight to midnight, no limits, no machines excluded. We'll all be playing video poker. There are a lot of penny slots with must hit by progressives on it, and with 15 times points, which is 4.5%, many of those will be quite playable. At videopoker.com, it's the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Magic Deal Poker. This is a 10 coin per line game where after the deal but before the draw, you receive sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 magic cards. You select the cards you want, and after the draw, the magic cards become the best available cards. It's a little similar to Dream Card, but not the same. In Magic Card, you may receive 1, 2, or 3 cards. Dream Card, only receive 1. Also in Magic Card, the cards are determined after the draw, whereas in Dream Card, they're determined before the draw. Also, the sound effects in Magic Card are not nearly so obnoxious.
All right, we're back talking to Lee Jensen. One of the themes of your blog falls into the category of making your money last longer. So far, you've written about using Priceline and Costco. Tell us about those.
Well, I'm sure there's actually other travel sites out there where you could save similar amounts of money or use similar tactics. It's just Costco and Priceline are the two that I am familiar with and use the most. The reason I like Priceline is their express deal feature. It's usually got pretty cheap rooms on it. Using some of the tricks that I wrote about, you can narrow the hotels down to where you're not actually completely guessing, on which hotel you're going to get. Usually I know exactly which one or within 1 or 2 that I'm bidding on or offering on. So that's why I stick with Priceline there. And then the reason why I like Costco website for rental cars is I can use the budget fast break program, and budget cars show up on the Costco website at a very cheap price, and using the fast break program, the car is waiting for me when I get to the airport, so I don't have to wait in line. I can just walk down to the area. There's usually a sign that says what spot the car's in, and I can just hop in and go. So it's kind of a time-saving and headache-saving thing for me. But
I liked your idea in the article about having multiple email addresses to slowly raise your bid on Priceline until you hit the number where they accept it.
Yeah, it works actually too.
Yeah, no, I don't know why I never thought of that. Although I've become a big fan of Airbnb. If you're staying for any length of time, it's nice to just get a whole house or a whole condo, and often the price is cheaper than a hotel, and you can have multiple people staying there and cook if you want. And also, I've mentioned before, a website that I like a lot is Auto Slash. So if you book something at Costco, you can then go to Auto Slash, put it in, and if Auto Slash at any time between now and the time that you rent the car finds a cheaper price, it will automatically just make the reservation for the cheaper price. So, and over time, it can go down several times.
Yes, I use AutoSlash as well and have found it very useful.
Good to know.
Blake had an article recently called "Keep Your Eyes Open and Your Ears Too."
Well,
You don't read the stuff he writes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. No, I did talk to Blake about that one before he wrote it. It's just kind of, it was something we had both talked about, and he was the one who had some good ideas to put into writing, and it mainly focuses on, kind of eavesdropping and paying attention to what's going on in the casino while you're playing. I think that's a very valuable thing for the advantage player. If I could have super hearing, I think I probably would make a lot more money.
We will often have an extra person just go on the other side of the pit or wherever to get as close as possible, just to try to listen in to those conversations or phone calls when the boss gets on the phone. Yeah, there's a lot of information to be had. There used to be a product advertised on television where it was something where you supposedly could hear conversations across the room, and I always thought, man, if that really worked, we could really use that. That'd be.
Yeah, I mean, it would be incredibly valuable if it just kind of goes back to the heat or sweat conversation. Imagine if you could hear what people are talking about always in the pit, you would never have to guess, really.
Yeah.
Or one of the things that was in that play where you and James had in Oklahoma on card craps, it was written about by, I'm blanking on his name. Michael Kaplan. The day after you left town, James went back to the casino, played the same way, making his hand signals into the ether where there was nobody to receive them, but just listening to see if they were talking about that weird little Joe guy the day before and to find out what heat there was. So, pretty interesting.
Not surprised by that. I think that was really a good idea.
The putting you on the spot again, another of the articles by Blake Phillips. He's really ruining your interview, isn't he? So you'll have to take that up with him. He's called Caught in a Lie. And it's basically the value of keeping your mouth shut, or rather the antithesis, the bad things about not keeping your mouth shut. Now, what do you remember about that one?
Yeah, again, that was something, as I said, we have played together over the past 2 or 3 years. And a lot of times, I'm sure, Richard, you run into this as well, especially like, in Oklahoma, say if you're betting big on something, they're going to go, hey, what brings you to town? Or, what do you do for a living? Or where are you from? Or whatnot. So if you say, oh, I just live up the street, that's probably not the best answer in that situation, because chances are that person could just live up the street and they're going to ask you about it. And what are you going to tell them?
You could easily get caught in the lie. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
And I think that also plays into one of your other articles, which is about don't try to be an actor.
Yes. Correct.
I couldn't agree with you more there. I mean, when people try to put on an act, it just looks as phony as can be.
Mm-hmm.
But having a good act, all of the old Blackjack books talked about having a good act.
Yeah, but I think, again, and this is what he wrote about, I think the act has to really be you. Like
yes.
A guest that we've had a couple of times, who Small Cap Growth, he had a great act, but it wasn't really an act. It was just him. That is who he is. He's a very gregarious, likes to talk to everybody, larger than life kind of guy. I mean, so it didn't come off as bullshit because it wasn't. It is who he really is.
Yep.
Getting caught in a lie, one of the lessons I learned very early, they always ask, "What's your name?" And, in the old days, I used to answer. And one of my teammates, he was sitting in the MGM back when it's now Bally's, but all of a sudden he realized there were 3 bosses in the pit, and one of them thought his name was Bob, and one of them thought his name was Bill, and one of them thought his name was Larry.
I actually answered all 3 of those things.
Yeah. So my first realization was, okay, no matter what, I'm always going to use the same first name, so I can't run into that problem. And now I just don't give my name at all. Although they call me Little Joe for because they think I told them a name.
So, if you keep refusing to tell them your name, do they get irritated? Does it eventually they stop asking, or
yeah, they stop asking.
Does that make them extra suspicious?
No, they just think you're weird, which gamblers are all the time. I mean, sometimes I'll just start talking to myself when they ask me a question, and then they just think I'm really weird. Give me an example.
What is your name, sir?
When I went down to the store, and the lady, she said that, and I didn't say anything to her. I mean, why was she asking me that? And I didn't know who she was, and she doesn't look like my mother. You start talking like that, and they just go,
they'll just
this
walk
guy's
away.
too weird, And, I actually learned that there was this really weird card counter named Arthur, who's probably out there somewhere still. He had one eye that looked left and one that looked up and to the right. And
there was a smart art and a not so smart art.
Yeah, this was
this was one of them.
Actually, I think this was a third art. But anyway, yeah, he would just sit at the table and mumble to himself. And I used to deal to him, and the bosses just thought he was the weirdest guy, except for the one boss who was smart, who could count cards, who knew he was a card counter, because you can't hide it, right? Yeah. If someone knows how to count, they can tell that you are counting. So, but yeah, he had a great act, but it wasn't an act. It was him. He was weird. His eyes looked crazy. His hair was never combed, and he would talk to himself under his breath. Yep. It works. It works really well. I have another friend who's just really rude to the dealers. I can't pull it off. But I mean, he's just really rude. Ask, what's your name? What, are you writing a book?
A Don Rickles approach?
Yeah. But or he'll say, "Just shut up and deal the cards." I mean that stops it pretty quickly.
So you must get the same kind of questions asked to you. Do you give them a name?
Yeah, I usually do.
I assume it's not Lee Jensen?
No, I definitely not. But I do just try to be very brief as well. If I do give them a name, it's just a one-word answer and kind of try to limit the conversation. I think being memorable, especially if you're not trying to be memorable as part of your act, is not a good thing usually. So I don't know if I could pull off just not telling them a name or the crazy act, but I like it.
Well, one way to do it is when they ask you your name, you ask them a question. All
right. Yeah. Now, excuse me, sir. What is your name?
Do you guys have a sports book? Do they have sports betting here? Where is it? And a poker room, too. Do they have 7 cards? If they ask again, do they have 7 stud in that game? Or just hold them? You just keep asking them questions without answering theirs. Eventually, they stop.
Yeah, I like it.
Interesting. Good. Too bad that doesn't work with video poker.
Well, video poker is great because you don't have to talk to anybody. You get to just sit in your own little zone and nobody bothers you and everybody treats you nice. Yeah.
Oh, but you do have to talk to them sometimes. Recently, I was at the M Casino here in Las Vegas and playing for a promotion on a double point day. And basically, I do all my play on double point day. And so they just changed the policy at the first of the month that now you have to swipe at the kiosk before you start playing in order to get double points.
I hate that.
And this was not the policy last month. And so by the time I did swipe and I saw the sign, I had played, 60,000 coin in. Now at that casino, that's $180 worth of the difference between single points and double points on for that. So I needed to go talk to somebody. So did go to the host office and said, look, nobody gave me a call. I'm an Icon player. This is new policy. Why should I be penalized $180 for something that you intentionally kept secret? And so it was polite enough, and it eventually got handled. But the interaction was important.
Yeah, sometimes you have to. Yeah.
Although the guy saw me the next day and he says, "Oh, I just looked up who you are. When are you going to start your classes again at South Point?" I said, "Well, the first week in August, but would have been okay
to see you there."
It would have been okay with me if he hadn't figured that out. Although his bosses certainly knew.
So they still let you play there, even with the way they're going, kind of with the cutbacks and stuff at the end.
The M hasn't really been kicking out other players a lot. If you can find value there, and I do, I think you're welcome to play there. But other casinos have been kicking out players with significantly more aggression than the M. All right, we've been talking to Lee Jensen. Thank you very much. So I wish you the best of luck on your apstreet.com. Richard, thank you. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.